In Moscow, 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed in 74 days. Food production collapsed with it. State farms went bankrupt. Supermarket shelves emptied. The American government and the European Union prepared emergency food aid for what they believed would be a famine of 150 million people. The famine never came, because in the gardens behind every Russian household, a 30-year-old technique was still quietly working. No electricity, no irrigation pipes, no fertilizer trucks. Just empty bottles buried in the dirt. It is one of the most effective watering methods ever invented, and you will not find it in a single modern garden store. Welcome to Nature's Lost Vault. The story begins in 1955. Stalin is 2 years dead. The Soviet Union is rebuilding from a war that killed 27 million of its own people. Food is rationed. Cities are starving. The new Soviet leadership makes a quiet decision that will reshape the country for the next 70 years. They begin giving away land, 600 square meters per family, about 1/7 of an acre. A plot just large enough for a small wooden cabin and a vegetable garden. The Russians call these plots dachas. By the 1970s, the program is on a mass scale. Tens of millions of urban Soviet families now have a small piece of land outside the city. They take the train out on Friday evenings. They grow potatoes, cucumbers, tomatoes, cabbages, berries. They preserve everything they cannot eat fresh. By the year 2000, official Russian statistics confirm what nobody in the West had quite believed. Over 35 million families, roughly 71% of the population, are engaged in dacha gardening. These gardens produce 92% of Russia's potatoes, 77% of the country's vegetables, and 87% of the berries and fruit. Let that land. The world's largest country, an industrial superpower with nuclear weapons, was being fed almost entirely by hand, on tiny garden plots, by ordinary families. And here is the part nobody talks about. None of these gardens had irrigation systems. The dacha had no running water, no municipal supply, no drip lines. Most plots had a single hand pump or a rain barrel, shared between dozens of families. Yet the gardens produced abundantly, even through the hot, dry summers of southern Russia and Ukraine. How? The answer was sitting in every Soviet kitchen. Walk through any Russian dacha in July and you will see them. A clear plastic bottle, neck down, buried up to the shoulder beside every major plant. Sometimes 2 or 3 around a single squash or melon. The technique was so common that Soviet gardeners would cut the bottoms off empty cola bottles and reuse them as plant protectors and water reservoirs, a habit passed down from parent to child for 3 generations. The bottle is filled once a week, maybe twice in a heat wave. That is the entire irrigation labor for the season. In the dry continental summers of central Russia, where temperatures regularly climb past 30 degrees Celsius and rainfall vanishes for weeks, these gardens did not just survive. They produced. When the Soviet bloc collapsed in 1991 and the heavily subsidized commercial agriculture collapsed with it, the dacha gardens survived. They were the main reason the Russian people did not experience a famine during the period. The state farms had tractors, chemical fertilizer, and centralized irrigation, and they failed. The dacha gardens had grandmothers and empty bottles, and they did not. So what exactly is happening inside that buried bottle? The buried bottle is often confused with the ancient clay olla, but they are not the same thing. An olla seeps water continuously through its porous clay wall. A buried bottle does something completely different. It releases water through restricted gravity flow. Inside the inverted bottle, atmospheric pressure holds the water in place. The water cannot fall out because there is no air above it to push it down. but the cap has 4 tiny holes, each about the diameter of a sewing pin. As the soil around the cap dries out and plant roots pull moisture away, air seeps in through one of the holes. A bubble rises into the bottle, and as it does, a single droplet of water is released into the soil. Then another, then another. The system is self-regulating. When the soil is dry, the exchange accelerates. When the soil is wet from rain, the exchange slows almost to a stop, because there is no moisture gradient pulling air through the holes. The bottle releases water only when the plant actually needs it. The brilliance is in the calibration. 4 pinholes will release roughly 200 to 400 milliliters per day in summer heat. That is almost exactly the daily water requirement of a mature tomato or pepper plant. 2 holes for smaller plants, 6 holes for a thirsty zucchini or squash. A 1.5-liter bottle waters a tomato plant for about 7 to 10 days. A 2-liter bottle will go longer. The entire system costs nothing. The bottles are in your recycling bin right now. Here is where the story turns. Almost every dollar of agricultural irrigation research over the last 50 years has been funded by industry. Industry funds research into products it can sell. The global drip irrigation market is now worth over $7 billion per year. The buried bottle is worth 0, and almost nobody has been paid to study it. The few studies that exist are revealing. A research team studying small farm tomato cultivation developed a simple drip irrigation system using 1-liter waste plastic bottles. The treated tomato plot yielded 5 kilograms more fruit than the conventionally flooded plot, using a fraction of the water. A separate study in Rwanda tested the same technique on Roma tomato cultivation. The researchers concluded that tomato farming under a plastic bottle drip irrigation system was profitable, with a benefit-to-cost ratio greater than 1 and an internal rate of return of nearly 31%. In other words, it pays for itself almost immediately, and pays nothing to anyone except the gardener who built it. These studies exist. They sit in academic databases. They are read by perhaps a few hundred people each. The findings are never replicated at scale, never picked up by extension agencies, never taught in Western horticulture programs. The industry does not need to suppress the buried bottle. It just has to not talk about it. Garden centers stocked drip kits, not bottle punches. Extension agents recommended timers, not pierced caps. Within 2 generations, a technology that fed tens of millions of families became something most Western gardeners have literally never heard of. Serious agriculture means agriculture that requires you to buy something. The buried bottle is the opposite. It is agriculture that requires you to throw something away less wastefully than you already do. That is the entire reason it disappeared. Reclaiming this is almost insultingly simple. You need 3 things: a clear plastic bottle between 1 and 2 liters, a sewing needle, and a candle. Heat the needle until the tip glows, then press it into the bottle cap 4 times in a tight cluster near the center. The holes should be small enough that when you invert the bottle full of water, nothing pours out. A slow drip should begin within a few seconds. If water gushes, the holes are too big. Start over with a new cap. Cut the bottom off with scissors. Leave the cap on. Push the bottle, cap first, into the soil about 10 centimeters from your plant base. Push until only the open top is showing above ground. Fill it with water. That is the entire system. A few details worth knowing. Use clear or translucent bottles only, because you need to see the water level. Avoid milk jugs since the plastic is too soft and degrades within 1 season. Avoid colored bottles, or you will not know when to refill. If you garden in a hot, dry climate, cover the open top with a flat stone or a half-buried tile to slow evaporation. If you garden where it rains regularly, Leave the top open, and the bottle will refill itself for free during every storm. For larger plants like squash, melons, or pumpkins, bury 2 or 3 bottles around a single root system. For seedlings, scale down to 500 milliliter bottles with only 2 cap holes. Check the water level once a week. Refill as needed. That is your entire irrigation labor for the growing season. If you dig up the bottle at the end of the season, you will find something quietly remarkable. The roots have wrapped themselves around the cap. Not near it, around it. The plant has found the source. Every root tip in the system has migrated toward the 4 tiny pinholes that fed it all summer. This is what irrigation looks like when the plant chooses the rhythm instead of a timer. The bottle does not push water at the plant on a schedule. The plant pulls water from the bottle when it is thirsty. The roots adapt. The system works because it follows the plant's biology, not a machine's. This is why it works in Soviet drought summers, in Indian monsoons, in Rwandan dry seasons, in Spanish heat waves. The mechanism is plant-driven, not human-driven. It does not care about your country, your climate, or your gardening budget. It only cares about physics and roots. There is a quiet pattern in the history of agriculture. The methods that work best for human flourishing are rarely the methods that work best for industry. The buried bottle waters a garden, as well as a $7 billion irrigation industry. It just does so without selling you anything. The Soviet grandmothers who kept this technique alive through the collapse of an empire did not wait for permission. The Indian farmers documenting it today are not waiting for permission. The Rwandan growers proving it works on Roma tomatoes are not waiting for permission. You have a bottle in your recycling bin right now. You have a needle in a drawer. You have a garden or a balcony or a single tomato plant in a pot. The bottles are still waiting. The technique still works. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. If this story changed how you see the empty bottle in your hand, subscribe to Nature's Lost Vault. We are digging up the survival technology they tried to bury. Plant the future. The next vault opens soon.